We go. Good afternoon, Andrew.
What's up, Tash? How's it going?
Can't complain. Pretty good. How are you on this fine
Um,
Tuesday morning?
I'm good. I'm good. A little stressed out because we've been looking for a place in Queens, and because it's so expensive out here, I'm looking at co-ops, and I've realized after talking to the real estate agent that the co-op boards can be pretty strict. And I mean, I know this because I live in a co-op already, but I forget it's been a while I had to deal with them getting a property. So
So before we talk about any of this, we're not tax professionals, so please
nope.
consult. Please consult as we'll find out some of the gotchas of doing things a certain way that might not be very forthcoming initially, but as you find out, it might have real life implications. So Andrew, you want to start off with your your dilemma over here?
Yeah, so I have a property. We made an offer. Offer was accepted, and then when I was talking to the real estate agent, who's very familiar with the co-op board, he kind of questioned some of my income and assets, and then the regular W-2 income from work. He's oh yeah, great, it's awesome. You guys fit under the guidelines. They have a debt to income ratio. But then when I mentioned, I was like, and I thought this was a good thing. I was like, oh, I also have some rental income, rental properties. I report on my taxes, so you can look at that. And he kind of was like, oh, you have properties? He's like, you have mortgages on that, or they're cash? I'm like, no, I have mortgages. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I'm not sure. That might be a liability because you have this mortgage. And I told him, well, they have income that covers it. And he was like, does this show that on your tax statement? And for the most extent, I think last year was okay, but then one of the years it shows that I have a loss, a small loss, because when you do your taxes, you have depreciation on the property. It's not an actual loss that you have to pay. It's just that I guess the IRS or whatever they consider your property is depreciating in value because it's getting older. That's not actual money that you have to pay somebody, but on your taxes, it reduces your income. And I'm telling this guy, it just paper loss. It's not a real loss. And he said, "Oh yeah, but he's not sure if the court board's going to look at it that way, and we don't know what they look at when they're deciding that stuff." So that's been worrying because I thought, oh look, rental property income, that's good. But then he's like, not that great, possibly.
So
We don't
let
know.
me try and understand from a layman's perspective. Uh, what you did was perfectly legal, and that's the way you show depreciation to offset rental incomes as one method. People that own lots of properties do this all the time. However, when you're trying to buy a property, the only thing they really look at is immediate tangible assets that you can sell or as not a liability. So they're looking at the fact that you have rental properties as if you have issues with those
Right,
properties, then you will not be able to pay your primary house's mortgage
right.
because you'd be strained over there.
Basically, yeah, that's one of them. And then I guess even on I guess a somewhat separate issue, they want to see like cash in your bank checking account or investment stock account. I guess it's considered liquid because you can just sell it easily. And actually I sold most of my stocks, which is a small amount, wasn't that big amount, but I sold a lot of it. I think around 2020 when I was buying a property, I was going to turn it to Airbnb and furnish it, but then that was the time when COVID hit, and I decided to just make it a long-term
So
rental.
if they're looking for just cash, can you get a loan for yourself from your 401k, show the cash, and then repay it back the next month?
actually, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, I have retirement
Game the
accounts. They're like,
system
oh,
back.
that's the thing, because I have retirement accounts, and they're like, oh, do you have anything that's more liquid? Because retirement accounts, I guess, if you take money out, you might get penalized, or they might be, if you withdraw it, there's a tax consequence. And if you take a loan from it, I guess they might. I'm not sure what they consider it, but they might consider it a loan too.
Yeah. So when I was getting my current home, they wanted 3 months worth of monthly statements
Right,
because they didn't want you to take somebody else's money. Except kind of like
right,
what I'm suggesting. Put it in for a, whatever, take a statement and then just show that. So you need to at least have it for 3 months. So so I do get that bit of it. They want to see what your assets are. But it's very odd that they don't look at equity building as an asset. Like they can offset what your home's value is to what your mortgage is or to your loan is.
right.
And that money
But
is
I
yours, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's not immediate, but
Right. I
it's
think
an
that's the
asset.
thing. They said it's not, I guess it wouldn't be liquid. It's not something you can get, you know, tap into. You'd have to take a home equity loan, or even selling it's going to take a few months. So I think they want something where can get
But
access to
I
it.
think I understand it, but it's also a little bit of bullshit because what is to say that you will pay the mortgage of your primary home if you even if you had the cash? Like let's say you would rather pay off the mortgages in your rental properties than your primary home. Like how would
I guess
like
most people assume you're not gonna want to be homeless. You're gonna pay your own primary residence. I guess that seems
I,
more likely.
there's a process to being homeless, and it's like
Right, I know,
I
but
get what they're trying to say, but it won't, like, even if you have stocks, you may choose not to sell them because you might take massive losses in them. So it's not really liquid because they might be like, you know what, I'm not going to pay my mortgage for a month. Maybe I'll catch up, to something else, or like maybe my stocks will rise back up. So I'm just not going to do. So I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand it. And so can you explain to me what happens if you do default and so the bank buys back or forecloses on your co-op? How does that hurt the board? Like the bank owns it, the bank will sell it.
well, I think their thing is that would probably hurt the values maybe of foreclosures, and like, even let me give you an example. Actually, there was one property that we looked at in a different building, a few blocks away, and it was a slightly lower price, kind of a low price, and I was like, oh wow, it's surprisingly low. But then when I talked to the agent, he kind of implied basically that they tried to sell it for even lower price because it was an elderly lady. She was moving out. It was in kind of a, I guess, older. It wasn't renovated. She was trying to sell it for a lower price because she wanted to just move out and go to a nursing home or assisted facility. She doesn't have family around. And he kind of implied, the real estate agent implied that basically somebody had made an offer. They accepted it. They went to the co-op board. The co-op board said, no, we're not accepting it. And basically said they want a certain price. They want a higher price, because I guess if they have a unit that's sold for a lower price, it would hurt the values of the other units, because people will say, oh, look, a comparable sale
Yeah, yeah.
at
I
this
mean, I get
price
it, but that
brings down
also
the
happens
value.
in the neighborhood that they don't have any control over.
Right.
It's not just
Well, kind of like, I guess
uh,
if you have an HOA or but I guess they don't have that much control. But like,
yeah.
I mean, neighbors, your neighbor might say, oh, that's, if you sell it for a cheap price, like, it's gonna affect the value of the other houses. So I think that's the general
Seems like a very foolish thing to try
idea.
to control. But I mean, yes, you can do that. But if there's houses going in your neighborhood for a certain price, I'm sure that affects the co-op apartment prices as well. It's not just it's not just the whole world isn't limited to just the edifice, or is that the right word? Yeah.
I think
Like the
so.
building itself.
We'll go with
Uh,
that. Right. Well, I think if the same building, you're gonna say, oh, this is the best comparison because it's the same building. Some of them have the same layout, same size. So,
no, I get it. But
you
some,
know,
people do things for reason. I mean, you have homes that sell for lower prices, and then somebody could just be like, yeah, I get it, but maybe that person was desperate to sell. I'm not. So you
Right.
can have, I mean, the next person that sells it, I mean, unless everybody keeps selling it for a low price, but
Right.
that might be a systematic issue where there's something really wrong with the building. If there's nothing wrong with the building, you can be confident that the next person isn't going to be desperate, and it will kind of
Right.
adjust itself over a span of whatever. But I get it. They're trying to keep uh, they're trying to
Right.
keep their value high, which is
Mm.
interesting because tangentially I was looking at some research data on affordable housing, and supposedly there was in the early 1900s, or maybe in the mid 1900s, there was a very big governmental push to create lots and lots and lots of affordable housing all over the country.
Right.
It got demolished because current homeowners didn't want that, because it devalued their homes having so many affordable housing. And so you had the rich that didn't want this to devalue their current properties. And then the people in power were the ones that were able to squash this, because there was supposed to be some kind of act to create affordable housing for every American, to the point where uh, anyone with a job would be able to afford a house because there would be so much supply of it.
Right.
But so it's always, it's complex. So that's manifesting this in the largest scale possible countrywide.
I think they
But
would definitely deal with that issue now. I mean, the housing prices are definitely pretty high. A lot of people can't afford to live
yeah,
in
but
certain
even
areas,
then,
and they,
correct, they can't afford to. But you and I can't deny that on the flip side of being homeowners, like if in the next 5 years there is so many houses that get built that your home value halves, that would kind of put you in a difficult situation, or put you under perhaps, because it wouldn't make sense, because then you won't have tenants first. You'd have to, because if you do kind of that, rental properties become a little bit of a moot point, because if everybody can afford a home, why would anybody rent, right? Like there would be a lot less renters. So I kind of get that argument. But this was early in where there were a lot less homes. So if the country had moved in that path, I think we'd be in a better place here. But now it's kind of like, well, there's so many homes, and if you put a strain on the entire housing industry of that caliber, you're not going to have any renters, or you have a lot less renters. So the rent prices will collapse. That might make those homes that are rental properties or business properties collapse. So it, I get it's a complicated argument, but it was very interesting. I did not know something like this existed in the country at a certain point in time where but kind of tangentially connects to exactly what you're saying. People don't want to devalue their current home because they own it, right? Like, so they have a financial uh, gain there. They don't want to lose.
right.
So, what are
But
you doing?
so right now, well, actually, well, one other thing when I was talking about the depreciation, when I want to go to the bank to get mortgages, the loan officer usually looks at the rental income and the expenses, and then they will not include the depreciation expense or depreciation amount in that calculation because it's not an actual expense out of your
Depreciation.
pocket, which
Got it.
makes sense. So so that's not a problem for a bank. For co-op board, I'm not sure. This real estate agent seems to think it might be so. So this year, since I made money last year on some of my rentals, I was trying to use the strategy where I would do a cost segregation study. It's an engineer goes to the property, looks at the some of the structural components, and you know rather than depreciate the house over like a longer time period, he was going to accelerate it and depreciate it in the beginning since I just bought it. and then I would have show a significant depreciation and not pay any taxes.
Right.
But I'm actually going to talk to the accountant today and say maybe that's not a strategy. Maybe I should pay my tax. Not that I wouldn't pay it before. It's just that I would get the depreciation front loaded instead of doing it over a
So
long
I am
time.
not, so when I spoke to my accountant, I did the same
Right.
thing this year because I have no plans of really selling my property. So anything I can get to offset my rental income is
Right.
beneficial for me now rather than later. But he did say there is, when you sell your home, there is an adjustment that gets done if you sell it too early. If you don't wait the 27 and a half years or whatever, if you sell it before that, there is an adjustment that has to be done that kind of negates what it is that you're doing here. But not, I didn't fully understand it. So I said, all right, that's fine. I'll deal with that when I decide to sell the house. But I'm not sure what he meant by that, or if he was gaslighting me or something, because he didn't want to do it. I'm not
Right.
sure.
Well, my understanding is, oh, one thing I guess we can talk about briefly. I guess since you lived in that house, at one point you considered selling it. So if you live in a house 2 out of the 5 years, the previous 5 years, you can
Of your
sell it
last five
without,
years, yeah. It
right? You
doesn't,
can
you
sell it,
can't say in the last 10 years, like, 7 years ago, I lived there
right?
for 7 years. It has to be two of the five of the
Right.
current past 5 years. Yeah.
Right. If you sell the property within that time frame, you would not pay any capital gains tax on it, which is a pretty good benefit. And what your tax accountant mentioned, I'm thinking I don't really have that clear understanding, but I think that the depreciation loss that you took for your property, sure. So basically, you're going to be paying. I guess they have to. They're since you took that deduction, you're gonna have to pay that back. Basically, I'm not sure in entirety or there's a fraction. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a fraction. He was trying to kind
right,
of whatever. He didn't know off the top of his head what it was, but he did mention that there isn't, it's not a clear cut, hey, you depreciate your home and then
right,
you just don't pay taxes on any income. Like I think when you sell
right,
it, if you sell it too early,
right,
you have to now go back and kind of see something. And there's a certain whatever. I guess I'll have to figure that out. Because I don't think
right.
I'm gonna
Basically,
keep
you're
my
just
rental. Huh? Yeah.
yeah. Basically, you're just deferring taxes into the future,
Right.
and then
That's what he said. It's not you're not gonna pay it. You're just paying it in the future.
real estate agent mentioned that too, whether that's relevant or not. Because when I mentioned this tax strategy, he said, "Ah, yeah, it's not going to look that good in your tax return." And I was like, and then he also mentioned, well, if you do this depreciation, you're gonna have to pay it back. I'm like, there is actually one way that a lot of real estate investors defer this even more. It is called a 1031 exchange, which is kind of complicated, and I don't want to go too much in detail because I don't really understand that well. But apparently, if you sell a property and you don't want to pay capital gains because you didn't live there, and you don't want to pay the depreciation recapture, you can do this exchange, basically buy another investment property. And there's rules and guidelines where you have to follow, but you can buy another property and kind of roll over the gains and depreciation and not have to pay that. And that's one way people
So
kind of
to do this, you cannot do a depreciation of your house, or can you do both?
you
Can
can
you do the
you, you can you don't have to pay that depreciation recapture because you're kind of putting it into the next house basically, and the
so it's
gains.
most beneficial if you do the depreciation and then you do
I
the
I
rollover.
think pretty much I don't know anybody that doesn't depreciate their rental property because I think my understanding is that even if you don't take the depreciation, the IRS will assume that you took it. So you'll be paying it back whether or not you took it or not. So yeah, I think you should definitely ask your accountant about why he didn't take it, or
Very
I don't know,
interesting.
get a second opinion maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So for you, you are going to change you're going to not show the depreciation for this year,
Well, not, I would show
or
maybe
not do that
regular
accelerate?
depreciation. Right.
Mhm.
So I'm going to talk to the accountant and figure that part
Will
out.
you be able to
So
use this study next year once you get your
yeah, that's
co-op?
actually a one I want to know because I thought
Or
about
do you
that
have to
too. I'm
do
like,
this
can
whole
I just,
exercise again?
I have to talk to my accountant, but I think I can't do it again. I think he said it's more complicated because usually you do it when you buy the property. Because I was going to do it on the property that I just bought in 2022. So,
Mm,
but he said you can still do it. I think it adds a extra layer of complication, but we shall see.
excellent. So some things to note: how you file taxes can impact trying to get a, not even a rental property, because I think it would have the same effect of banks. Or no, like you said, the banks just don't look at it. They just look at it as a paper loss. They don't really look at it as an expense when they're doing their calculations, when they're giving you a mortgage. It's just
Right.
you have to
They
deal
seem
with a
they're
co-op
definitely
board
a little more
that seems to prefer
right.
liquidated cash as a asset, nothing else.
And actually, I feel like I'm being punished for being a good little saver because I put a lot of money in, in retirement accounts too. So, because also to save on taxes, when you put money into, 401k, the traditional one, you can lower your income and pay less taxes. So that was what I was trying to go for. But then now they're like, yeah, I'm not sure. It's a retirement account. I don't know if they consider that liquid. I'm like, that's where a lot of my money is. So we'll
That's what
see.
a
So
lot of people's money is. But that's really
right.
interesting because they, when they give you a mortgage, they look at that, right? They
Yeah,
definitely looked
they
at my
do.
401k as an asset and
Right.
like, oh, how much money do you have? If I had, I'm sure they would have preferred if I had, you know, in my savings account rather than my
Right.
401k. But they still look at it as a certain, I think they look at it as, okay, how much can you get out even with the penalties, whatever it is, right?
Right.
They're not gonna.
Right. Yeah.
Um, cool. I mean, but again, this is not a done deal story. Someone on the board might understand how things work and say, yeah, it's just this realtor seems to think the board will not, and the boards aren't experts, right? They're just regular people that
Regular people, yeah, who live there.
are looking at stuff without an expertise or something. They may have a lawyer that I don't know if the board or a co-op board has a lawyer that reviews these kinds of things outside of just them and advises them on, hey, here's the breakdown for this person, the risk and
Right.
the, whatever. But I would think there would be, but maybe there isn't, depending on, I guess, how big a
Yeah, I
board
don't think
is.
they probably don't want to pay an attorney to review applications and stuff.
Well,
I
it
think they
depends on how
just
many how many
yeah.
how many co-ops does that building have?
Uh it's like 7 buildings and I don't know how many units in each building, so it's a pretty large
Right.
complex.
So, I mean, I don't know how much time people spend on their board, but if like 5 units are getting, or maybe even let's say 5 units are getting bought and sold every year, and they're like 3 or 4 people's paperwork, I'm not going to sit there and want to look through 50 different paperworks every year just to be like, yeah, I approve, I do not approve. But maybe that's why people do it for that kick. I'm not
I
sure,
don't
but
know.
I just feel like they would pay somebody to kind of do a review of it and give them the cliff notes, so to speak. Because when we get rental, like we both use property managers. I don't know how your property manager does it, but mine puts out the ad, takes pictures of the property, looks at the previous ads or whatever. They have the ads, so they tell me what they think the price should be. They collect all the applicants. They give me a presentation of, here's a couple that we've had, here's the one we're recommending based on this, and they look at all that and they give me a recommendation. I usually either go with it or I don't for whatever reason. Case an example, I had 2 applicants for my rental property very recently, and one of them owned 2 dogs. And I thought that having dogs and a carpeted a house would depreciate
Right.
the internals of it faster. So I said no to that, and I said, can you change the posting to be no pets? So they did that, and then they had two other folks apply, and then we picked the one from there that we liked the most, based on income and all that other raw data, facts and job history, etc. But they presented it to me because I wasn't
Right.
there trying to understand what these people like. Like I would, if I looked at a credit report, I wouldn't. I mean, yes, I would just know what the story is, and like, but I wouldn't understand income in, expense out, and like all that stuff. They kind of broke all that down for me. They have this income, this expense, this is their whatever, this is their savings, kind of whatever it is that they collected. I wouldn't want to try to do that with the 3 or 5 applicants that I had. I wouldn't make heads or tails and probably make a bad decision based on whatever I thought I was understanding. So
Right. I'm
that's
sure they
really,
have a lot of experience
yeah.
doing that, so I usually rely on them. But yeah, my property managers don't go into that much detail. But I think for your property, the rental, the value is a lot higher, the price that people are paying. So the different
Well, yeah,
asset
it's
class.
direct. If they get a bad tenant, one, I don't get the rent, but they don't get the rental income, like
Right.
the percentage of it
The
either. And then they're responsible for helping me get the tenant off. So they're gonna have to, because they're the ones, they collect all the funds and the money, and then they give me my cut, basically taking off theirs. So basically, I do nothing other than like, it's not like they're paying me and I'm giving them something
yeah,
and I have to give it to them. If there's no tenant there, they don't make anything, right? Like, and I'm sure it's the same with your property management. Like they're running
that's
the
good.
portal to collect the money and all that stuff.
That's good because actually not all property managers. Actually, one of them, I think, he said that he's going to charge his fee whether or not the tenant is paying. His stance is basically, I guess, he still has to manage the property whether or not the person is paying rent.
Mhm.
So,
That
but
that's odd. Like, the
so there's
rent, I
definitely
mean,
something you have to look
the,
into.
the rent fees come from the rent. If the
Yeah,
person didn't pay rent, why am I gonna pay you a rent fee? Your,
right,
you know.
right. For the most part, that's the case. But yeah, that's why I guess if you hire a property manager, you should definitely look into
Yeah.
the terms to see whether they pay they get paid if the person's not paying rent. So
Yeah, and then I mean, I'm sure that's the first month goes to fully.
right
And
to
then if
leasing.
if a person renews more than 3 years, then at the third year, sorry, at the fourth year, after the third year, they will take another 1 month. If the person renews for, it's not like you can
Okay, that's not
continuously
bad.
keep the same tenant, and never pay a rental fee again, like,
Right.
other than the 10%. So
Because then
then
they would
there's
have
that.
an incentive not to. They would have an incentive not to have the person move out. I guess if they want to, get
Yeah,
that
they have
fee.
an
So
incentive
that's good.
to kind of get a fresh tenant after 3 years.
Well,
I don't
no,
know if
actually,
that's a
the
good.
3 years you said that they pay they had to pay their lease up fee, the 1 month fee. So the 3 years they're fine. You're paying them
No, no,
anyway,
no,
right?
no. I think it's the opposite of what I just said. So the first month's rental goes fully to the management company. After
Right.
that, it's 10%. Now, if they renew the lease for the second year, I don't pay that 1 month.
Right.
Uh, if they renew it for the third year, I don't pay the 1 month. But if they renew it for the fourth year, then the first month of the fourth year goes to the rental agency again.
Okay.
So they make more money if they keep switching my tenants every year, right? Because
Yeah.
then they will make 1 month out of every year.
Right.
As but they also have work, because I think that rental fee is their advertisement, their collection of
Yeah,
all
that's
these.
true.
Look at it
That's
as
true.
like, like whatever. So I think maybe they look at it as, hey, we didn't really do any work for it. They might as well just collect the 10%. But um, I guess the fourth year they look at it as some source of income, because otherwise they wouldn't ask for that third year, because they didn't do any more work on the fourth year than they didn't do on the third year, right? So it's the same amount of work. So
I think with my Kansas City rental property, they charged if the tenant renewed, they would charge a fee, but it was like a lower fee. It was like maybe 25 or 50%. And their stance was, we did a good job managing it, that they want to stay, so we should get some kind of incentive, I guess, I
You
don't
can
know.
argue for
So,
anything almost, like
yeah. But so yeah, it's definitely different for a different agency.
in any case. All right, so I think that's all the time we have for today, but some got yous of how you file taxes and how to get property and how assets and liabilities get calculated sometimes and whatnot. Real life, I guess.
I'll let
So
you know what
until,
happens.
yes, I would be very curious. Until next week.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.